We are looking at one of the most significant works in modern Chinese literature, the novel To Live by author Yu Hua. The narrative follows a man named Fugui through the mid-20th century, spanning 40 years of war, famine, and radical social upheaval in rural China. Fugui's life is defined by a series of relentless subtractions. He is stripped of his wealth, his status, and eventually everyone he loves. By examining how he moves through these losses, we can start to see a different logic for what actually makes a life worth living. We start with a man who has everything. As the heir to 100 mu of land, young Fugui is defined by his arrogance. He wears expensive silk and insists on being carried through town on the back of a hired servant. Even with a family at home, he spends his nights in the city's gambling houses and brothels, treating his inheritance like an inexhaustible resource. This is the starting point. Before Fugui can find the stillness he reaches at the end of the story, this entire material world has to be dismantled. The dismantling begins at the gambling table. A gambler named Long carefully orchestrates Fugui's ruin, tricking him into betting the family's entire fortune on a series of losing hands. Fugui signs away the deed to his land. The shock is so immediate that his father collapses and dies shortly after they are evicted from their home. Shortly after Fugui is reduced to a tenant farmer, the political landscape shifts. The new communist government begins the land reform era, targeting the wealthy. Long the man who won Fugui's estate, is classified as a landlord and executed. Fugui, now a peasant with nothing to his name, is spared. The very wealth that Fugui mourned losing would have likely led to his death. In this environment, his poverty becomes his shield. But survival is a daily struggle during the Civil War. Fugui is snatched off the street by retreating nationalists and forced into a brutal military campaign. On the front lines, life is reduced to its most basic biological terms. Fugui watches his comrade, Old Quan, die in the mud, with blood literally slipping through his fingers as he tries to stop the bleeding. Surrounded by death and starvation, Fugui and his friend Chen Sheng stop caring about which side wins. Their focus narrows to a single, urgent goal: making it back to their families alive. After months in the trenches, Fugui's world has shrunk. There is no grand plan or long-term ambition, only the immediate necessity of the next breath. Fugui eventually makes it home, but the following decades bring a relentless series of personal tragedies. His future is cut short first. His son, Yugui, dies during a blood transfusion, and daughter Fengshe in childbirth. His wife Jazan dies of illness, followed by his son-in-law Erxi. Finally, his grandson Kugan dies in an accident. Fugui is the only one left. His friend Chen Seng, who survived the same war, eventually takes his own life when the political pressure of the Cultural Revolution becomes too much to bear. Fugui, however, keeps walking. He has been methodically stripped of everything that traditionally defines a man's life, leaving him entirely alone. This brings us to the man the narrator meets at the end of the book. Fugui is an old farmer now, with skin as weathered as a dirt road, working a small field with his ox. To keep the animal moving, he calls it by the names of his dead family members. It's a way to fill the silence of the fields, making the ox believe it's part of a larger team. There is no bitterness in his demeanor. When he talks about his past, he smiles. His wrinkles are filled with nothing but dirt and sunlight. Fugui has reached a state where his peace doesn't depend on what he owns or who he has. He exists simply for the sake of existing. Yu Hua actually found the seed for this character in the American song Old Black Joe. He was moved by the image of an elderly slave who, despite a life of immense hardship, looked upon the world with kindness. It's a perspective that challenges the typical heroic arc. Rather than a hero who succeeds by changing his fate, Fugui finds a different kind of strength in absorbing it. In this narrative, the act of enduring becomes the goal itself. Fugui respects the life he has, not for what it provides him, but because he is still here to live it. After everything is taken away, the simple acts of waking up, breathing, and tending to the earth become a triumph of the human spirit. Fugui's story asks us to consider what remains when everything else is gone. To see that process for yourself, I highly recommend reading To Live.